Hey everyone, I'm Matt Friedman, Matt F. the Oracle. It's Thursday, November 12th, 2015, and it's time for another edition of the College Daily Slant, powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by DraftKings.com. This is the PFF radio show dedicated to college football and daily fantasy sports, and we have a great show coming up. With me is Wes Huber, the PFF Fantasy College Football Lead Writer. You can follow him on Twitter at PFF_Wes. And also, we're very pleased to have joining us Ryan Rao, a writer for PFF Fantasy. You can follow him on Twitter at Ryan Rao. Ryan, how's it going?
It's going great. Excited to talk some college football and excited for this weekend's action.
Yeah, awesome. It is fantastic to have you on the show, and as always, it is always fun to talk some college football. And I can't believe that it's week 11. The college football playoff debates are in full swing. There is so much that will be happening in the next few weeks, and at Pro Football Focus, we've got you covered with all the college football content you can handle, and with the PFF Fantasy Gold Package, you can get it all for only $29.99. All right, Heisman talk is really starting to heat up, fellas. With LSU and TCU losing last weekend, the Heisman campaigns of Leonard Fournette and Trevone Boykin have taken a hit. I don't know if there's really a clear front runner in the race right now. This could be one of the tightest Heisman races in recent memory, which I think is really exciting and fantastic for college football. So in the first half of the show, Ryan and Wes are each going to give us their three Heisman finalists, one each at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, although I suspect that Wes, being the rebel that he is, might mix it up a little bit. And then in the second half, Ryan and Wes are going to give us their DFS plays of the week. So let's get into it. Ryan, we will start with you. Who is your Heisman finalist at the quarterback position?
I guess we'll start off with kind of my wild card. I think Baker Mayfield has a really good chance to jump up the ranks this year and kind of make a run at the Heisman. I mean, right now his stats are right there where you want him to be. 28 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. I think he has something like 5 games where he has 3 or more touchdowns and 0 interceptions, which is pretty unheard of this year. 70.2% completion percentage. All the stats are there, and it really comes down to these last 3 games. I think he's got Baylor this weekend, then they are home against TCU, and finish with Oklahoma State. And I think whichever team comes out of the Big 12 has a real chance to kind of push whoever that player is into the Heisman conversation. I think Oklahoma's going to win these last 3 games, and I think Mayfield is going to be the guy to beat at quarterback when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I could definitely see OU being able to win out and take the Big 12 championship. Wes, do you have any thoughts on Mayfield, and then who is your quarterback finalist?
Yeah, I mean, Mayfield's had a great season so far. Ryan went over the numbers, and they're spectacular. But the thing that worries me about him, and I think that I think Heisman voters may take into account. Now, he is playing in a Power 5 conference. The Big 12 is definitely a prestigious conference where you're going to have high-level opponents, but he is playing within a spread air raid option offense that uses a lot of trickery to generate openings for their receivers. Now, that's not to take away from his accuracy. His accuracy has been at the top of the country. But look back on the quarterbacks that have played in this type of system that have gone on to the NFL. If we're going to look at a Heisman guy, what about Johnny Manziel? Yeah, he had his great year, his rushing year, and I think that was what put him over the top was his rushing yards. But the problem I have with this type of quarterback air raid type option guys is that we're looking at guys, the best of the group being Geno Smith, a Case Keenum, a Kevin Cobb, Brandon Weeden. I mean the list goes on of guys that played in this type of program that fizzled out as they moved on. Yeah, the most successful guy that previously played in a college air raid offense was Nick Foles. So, I mean, I'm not trying to take away from him, but I do wonder if that's going to be something on the committee's mind when they vote for the Heisman. For my guy, I mean, it's funny that I'm sitting here and I'm dogging the air raid, whereas my quarterback is actually within an air raid system, but he's not an air raid type quarterback. He hasn't played in an air raid or spread option offense his entire career throughout high school like Baker Mayfield, whereas Baker Mayfield played with Texas Tech during his freshman year. I like Mason Rudolph, Oklahoma State. I mean, think about it. The guy came into this season basically with 3 starts, 200 college snaps, and has catapulted himself into becoming the number 4 quarterback in PFF college grading scale. That's a huge achievement. 9 games into the season, basically, we're talking about a redshirt freshman. And even more impressive, he's the number 3 quarterback against Power 5 teams. He leads the number 4 most effective passing offense in the country, and what's even more impressive is that he has absolutely no running game whatsoever. He'll get the occasional a big run or decent run from one of his running backs, but nothing that really adds much to that offense. And he's also overcome the 11th most drops in the country this season, which up until recently he really didn't have a number 1 wide receiver. But man, with James Washington, the way he's been playing lately, if they keep connecting the way they are, and Oklahoma State wins out, it's going to be an interesting race. One of the things that really impresses me about Mason Rudolph, and I mentioned it before, is his delivery. He's got a top 10 release as far as speed goes, that his average time to throw, and he's also the 8th quickest time from snap to delivering the ball out of the pocket, which is something that's very difficult for quarterbacks to learn when they get to the college level from high school. It's a young kid. He's huge. He's got NFL size. Man, it blows me away that we're already, I'm actually considering him as a Heisman candidate.
Yeah, I think he definitely is an intriguing talent. I think it's a question as to whether he would be able to garner the interest, given that so much of his potential production is going to another quarterback on his team, but he certainly is an interesting guy. Now,
one thing I forgot to mention, I would like to add, he is the number 1 quarterback in college football in accuracy on 20-plus yard throws of everybody, which is pretty impressive. And I do see what you're saying. If they win out, though, I think that might ease that concern.
Yeah, and certainly it always helps when a guy is coming from an undefeated team. Now, Ryan, who do you like as your Heisman finalist at the running back position?
For running back, I have Ohio State's Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, all this guy does is put up 100-yard games. And he's got his 3 toughest games coming up here against Illinois this week, and then Michigan State and Michigan to round out the year. But he's 6th in the nation in rushing yards. He's really the only constant on the Ohio State offense. Seems like their quarterback is switching every other game, and they really don't have much of a consistent wide receiver threat. You have Braxton Miller, who kind of seems to come and go, but really Elliott's the only one that really every game shows up, takes over a game, averages about 6.5 yards a carry. He's got 14 touchdowns on the year. I just think really if Ohio State can run the table, he's going to be the running back along with maybe Derrick Henry if Alabama keeps on winning. That everyone's going to be talking about, and if no quarterback jumps out, I think it's one of those two, but I like Elliott. I like Ohio State this year.
Yeah, I don't know how much resistance you're going to get on that from Wes, but I think he really likes Ezekiel Elliott. I'll be curious to see what he has to say. Wes, what are your thoughts on that? And then who is your running back Heisman finalist?
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody who I'm gonna be 100% straight with you. Anybody that claims any other running back is deserving of the number 1 spot right now on the running back list is either biased or, and I mean this, lightly ignorant to the numbers that are presented to us, it's a clear presentation of a player that has done absolutely nothing since last season to change the persona that he displayed during the playoffs last year. I mean, let's get away from just the the counting stats, the numbers that we all look at, the sexy numbers, the yards, the touchdowns. Let's look a little bit deeper. There's no other running back in college football that even comes close to Ezekiel Elliott as a blocker.
Absolutely.
Look at it this way: he's the number one graded running back in the country right now, and number two, his grade is 53% less. He hasn't allowed a sack, a pressure in any game this year, and he's gone all season catching the ball out of the backfield without a drop. Only 3 players, including with Zeke, so 4 players have seen 24-plus targets as a running back and have 0 drops. Tyler Ervin, Jeremy McNichols, Elijah McGuire, and Zeke. Honestly, it's between him and maybe one other guy to me, but public perception plays a big role, and I've seen a lot of really respected individuals have Zeke not even on their Heisman list. And because you went with Zeke, I was going to go kind of against the grain here. And I mean, yeah, obviously Derrick Henry, Leonard Fournette, those are the guys that are probably next. But let's look at a guy that deserves to be in the conversation. Christian McCaffrey out of Stanford. Elliott is the top graded running back in the country right now in PFF college grading scale. But McCaffrey is actually ahead of him against Power 5 opponents. He leads the nation with his receiving grade, and also in yards per route run. He's just an elite receiver out of the backfield, and I can't even imagine his potential playing in a New England Patriot system. It just is beyond my comprehension. It's just his ability. It's like Brady getting Wes Welker when he was fresh out of college, and it's just amazing what he could have done with him. And we're not looking at a guy that's gonna break through stacked defensive lines or somebody that's gonna break off 80-yard runs with consistency. But he is able to do all those things and more. Look at it this way: Barry Sanders has the all-time total yardage record at 3,200 and something. And actually McCaffrey is close to surpassing that number this year. If he were to break that record, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that he should at least be invited to, the ceremony. I mean, he's got somewhere around 2,200 yards right now, averaging around 240 yards a game. Now he will need at his current pace, he will need a couple of postseason games to get to that number, but that would be an amazing accomplishment if he is able to do that. So I mean, honestly, McCaffrey to me, yeah, he's not going to win the Heisman this year, but I'm rooting for him, and honestly, he's probably number 2 on my list, 2 or 3 maybe. Dalvin Cook might be number 2, but he's number 2 or 3 as far as NFL potential for me, for what he could do for the different types of offenses that would definitely go out and get him.
Sure.
Now, Ryan, do you have any thoughts on McCaffrey?
He is a fantastic college player, and I think in the right system in the NFL, like Wes was saying, if he goes to the Patriots, if he goes to the Broncos, or he goes to one of these teams with a really smart quarterback and a smart coordinator that knows how to use what he can do, I think he has great NFL potential. My favorite college and NFL player of all time was Barry Sanders, so I kind of am rooting against McCaffrey for that reason. But what he's done this year is amazing, and I think if he didn't play on the West Coast and more people had a chance to see him, I think he would be getting a lot more hype right now than he is. But I think there's a West Coast bias. I think not a lot of people see him play. They just kind of see the highlights, and that hurts him a little bit. But Yeah, like Wes said, if he gets a couple of postseason games, I think he's going to break that record, and you can't ignore the numbers. And I think he definitely deserves an invite to the Heisman ceremony, but I just don't think he is the guy that's going to win it this year.
Yeah, and with Stanford's style of play, it would be pretty exciting to see them in the postseason. So, yeah, and if that happens, I mean, who knows? He wouldn't win the Heisman, but he could end up emerging at the end of the season as maybe one of those premier running backs in college football that everyone knows about. Now, Ryan, let's go to the wide receiver position. Who is your Heisman finalist there?
For me, there's really only one guy, and that's Corey Coleman at Baylor. It doesn't matter who's throwing the ball, Seth Russell or Jarrett Stidham. He's making them look good. He's making that offense look good. I really think he's the guy. I mean, he leads the nation in yards per game. He leads the nation in touchdowns, and it's not even close as far as receiving touchdowns. He averages over, I think, 20 yards a catch. And like I said before with Baker Mayfield, it really comes down to if Baylor can run out the season and make that Final Four playoff team, I think is where he's going to either win or lose the Heisman. But if there's a wide receiver to do it, it's Coleman. I think he's got 7 straight games with 2 touchdowns at least. He's got more than double any other receptions on anyone else on his team. It's just I think if a wide receiver is going to do it, which I don't know that it will happen, but if he keeps up these numbers and keeps playing the way that he has been, I think he's the guy to beat at that position.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. And I think if Baylor wins out and Coleman continues to really stud it up, at that point he and not Seth Russell is the marquee guy on that team. And I think an undefeated Baylor would have a pretty strong chance of making it into the college playoffs. And it would be hard not to have, I think, a finalist who is a great offensive playmaker from an undefeated team. But Wes, I'm a little curious as to your thoughts and then who your third Heisman finalist is.
Well, yeah, Corey Coleman is all that. I mean, he is definitely the only guy at wide receiver in consideration. Well, now Josh Doxson has miraculously made some type of improvement to where he's going to play this week against Kansas. I'm not sure why he would play in that game. And not sit this one out. But if that is true, then and absolutely, I would have definitely keyed in on Doxson. But I was under the impression that he was done, and I'm still not completely sold. That wrist injury looked pretty bad, and I'm pretty sure that's the same wrist he had surgery on during the summer. And of course, they keep all injuries to themselves, so we really don't know about Doxson. But Corey Coleman, I mean, he's a highlight reel. Honestly, he reminds me a lot of an Antonio Brown. His NFL future is it's really bright, and I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, again, we're going to now. This isn't to take away from his potential, but the system that he plays in is obvious, considering the quarterback that they're able to flip in and out. Now, I'm not saying that his numbers are based off the system. I'm just saying that he gets such a high volume of receptions that it's almost like they're trying to win the Heisman for him. But, you know, the problem I have at this point isn't the system. It's not his numbers. It's not the volume. It's that they haven't even played a team with a winning record. So I can't even look at him as a Heisman candidate. I honestly need to see him play against at least a team with a winning record, you know, and it doesn't have to be one of the top 10 teams. Just a 500 team would be great, you know. So you know, we haven't seen that yet. So you know, we'll see what's going on when he plays against a real defense, and looking forward to that. But yeah, for my third guy, since I'm bypassing the wide receiver position, I'm going with Joey Bosa out of Ohio State. You know, there may not be another wide receiver in the country, maybe outside of Josh Doxson, but I'm not even sure if Josh Doxson is as dynamic as Corey Coleman. Now on defense, there's one guy in the entire country that is as disruptive as you'll find at any position, and that's Joey Bosa. The amount of attention that he receives from opposing offenses, it changes the entire game. Of course, he's the number one edge rusher in PFF system. I mean, not only that, he's number one overall. He's number one versus the run. He's number one in pass rushing, and he didn't even play in week 1. I mean, it's amazing what he's done this year. Okay, look at it this way. I mean, just wrap your mind around the fact that he averages 3.6 hurries per game. That means he's chasing your quarterback with a beeline to your quarterback and nobody between 3.6 times a game. He's hitting your quarterback 2.1 times per game. He's tackling 2.5 of your guys in the backfield per game, and he's stopping the run just either a 0 or 1 yard gain 3.5 times per game. That right there is just mind-boggling how one player can do that despite the constant stream of double teams going his way. He's number one in the country in pass rush productivity versus Power 5 opponents. When he gets his mind set on something, he accomplishes it on the football field. He's got the number 3 overall and the number 6 versus Power 5 run stop percentage. You just don't run the ball towards him. Again, he's short 1 game, yet he's number 4 among all edge rushers in hurries, number 1 in hits. And think about this, he's got 30% more hits than number 2 on the list, and he didn't play in a game. And the thing that cannot be explained in numbers is a stat that we've yet to capture, and that's the impact that he has on his surrounding teammates and what they're able to do based off of the amount of attention that he receives. It makes everyone around him so much better. Now, I'm not saying he's J.J. Watt. He's nowhere near J.J. Watt. He could be in the future, and that's the thing. He hasn't reached his potential. But the impact that he has on his team at this level, very similar to what J.J. Watt brings to the Houston Texans. Okay, and then the one thing I did want to mix up as far as the way we were going to go is I wanted to talk about a few steps that kind of like my ideas on how we could revolutionize the Heisman and how the Heisman process goes. The most pressing and the first step that I think is the most important to evolving the Heisman race is it actually involves other additional steps that I won't go into. But bottom line, the hotshot quarterback dominance of the Heisman Trophy, it must stop. The Heisman Trophy it should be an encompassing award for every position. When you look back at Charles Woodson winning the award, you're amazed that what he was able to do that season as the only defender to ever win the Heisman. We need more of that, and not only at that position. We need defensive ends. We need offensive linemen. We need anybody that's able to absolutely transcend any type of matchup or any type of opponent. That's the type of player that needs to be in consideration for the Heisman. The quarterbacks are great, but honestly, which this gets into my number 2, quarterbacks should be the most scrutinized position and not the most looked at as he's the quarterback, so he's the best player. No, I think there should be a lot more to that. And then one other thing, and when we go back and we look at Johnny Manziel, and this isn't a knock on Johnny Manziel, I'm sure he's a good guy, but he has a lot of character issues that are putting a bad reputation on his place as a Heisman winner. And then we have Reggie Bush and his situation. What the NCAA needs to do is they need to have an extensive background check that involves just that player in the NCAA. And this information shouldn't be leaked, and it shouldn't lead to any type of loss of eligibility. But if there's anything, I mean, I'm talking a yellow, a red, a fuchsia flag that points that player may have a flaw in their past, then just move on. No suspensions or anything like that. And then one of the other things I think that really hurts the Heisman race is a team wins. It really shouldn't be about is your team won every game, because that one player is not able to win every game for their team, and that's obvious with the best player in the NFL, J.J. Watt. Look at the Houston Texans. But yeah, I think a player should be able to pull ahead of problems with their team and still be in consideration there. And then the last thing, and I think it's the most obvious, is we don't live in the yardage and touchdown and the easy to eyeball number age. We live in the age of the metrics, the scouting services. We need to take the selection for the Heisman candidates to the next level, to where we're looking at the deeper numbers and finding the players that truly would represent the Heisman Trophy.
All right, Wes, great stuff. Ryan, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on, I guess if you were to kind of revamp the Heisman process, any quick thoughts on what you would do there?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Wes said. I just think that the Heisman Trophy right now is for the casual fan, and it's sad to say that, but I think that's the truth. I think you have to sell the Heisman Trophy winner on this single play that, like Johnny Manziel spinning around twice and heaving the ball up for Mike Evans to catch. I think you need to sell the country on that play to get them interested in college football, and I really would like to see a defensive end like Joey Bosa win it. I think he's absolutely deserving this year. I think he should be the number one pick in the draft this year, but I don't think he's even going to sniff the Heisman Trophy because he has 3.5 sacks. And everything that Wes said was true, and all the pressures and all the hits in the backfield and the tackles for a loss are all absolutely relevant when you evaluate talent. But the sad fact of the matter is he has 3.5 sacks, and that's what you have to scroll on the bottom of the screen when he's holding the trophy up, and I just don't think the public is going to buy into that yet. So I'd like to see them make slow changes to the process as far as, let's get it away from the quarterback to start. Maybe give it to a running back, maybe give it to wide receiver, and maybe give it to a linebacker or a cornerback or a defensive end like Joey Bosa, not because of the numbers, but because he's the most impactful player in the country. So I don't know exactly how you do that. I think Wes had some great steps and some great thoughts on the trophy, but I'd like to see that change as well.
All right, guys, I think a fantastic conversation right there on the Heisman, and it'll be a lot of fun to see how it plays out. But again, a fantastic conversation. In fact, it was almost as fantastic as 1 week fantasy football at DraftKings.com, where it already feels like the playoffs, with millions of dollars being won each week. Every play in every game could take you closer to a life-changing payday. This isn't fantasy as usual. This is DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code PFF. With your first deposit, you can play for free in this Sunday's $1 million fantasy football contest. First place takes home $100,000. Enter PFF for a free entry now at DraftKings.com. That is DraftKings.com. All right, fellas, speaking of the big time, it is here we are going to look at our FanDuel and DraftKings plays of the week. Let's just dig into those DFS selections. Ryan, who is it that you like at the quarterback position this week?
Yeah, my guy is going to be a value play. I think there's a lot of good high-end quarterbacks to go with, but and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but Joe Huebner, Kansas State, he's 6,500 on DraftKings and even less, 6,200 on FanDuel, which you don't see very often. I guess my theory is Texas Tech being such a pass-happy offense, they are really poor against the run. I think they've given up 30-some-odd rushing touchdowns this year, and Huebner likes to run the ball. I think last week he had 153 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, something to that effect. Texas Tech has given up 14 rushing touchdowns in the last 3 games, so I think Huebner's a guy that Should run the ball. He's kind of the beginning and end of that Kansas State offense, and if that turns into a shootout, he's got a great chance to have a really high ceiling this week. So I'm going to go with him and then lock in some higher-priced guys in the running back and wide receiver slots.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and it always is nice if you're going cheap at the quarterback position to have that high floor of rushing production that you can count on. Now, Wes, who do you like at the quarterback position?
Yeah, I really love that pick. I thought he looked great against Baylor last week, and he really exploited the flaws in their defense. I think. This week at quarterback, I'm going to do the same thing and go with a guy a little higher price, but one that I think is worth the value that you'll receive, and that's Brett Rippon for Boise State. He's coming in as a DraftKings exclusive at $6,700. So basically, FanDuel doesn't get to play, with the big boys this week. So it's really disappointing 2 weeks in a row that they've missed out on a great matchup. Yeah, I mean, New Mexico against Boise State, I love it. And honestly, I think I don't care how lopsided the matchup is. I think all games should be involved in the DFS system. And yeah, I mean, he's going to be playing at home. In all the games that he's played this year, he's only had one where he scored less than 20 fantasy points, which is impressive for a true freshman. Obviously he had the one bad game, but it was against the number 17 total defense of Utah State. So it was a predictable struggle, going up against his first difficult matchup. In the 6 games that he's played this year, in 4 of those games he's had multiple touchdowns. He's hit the 300-point bonus in 3 of the 6 of those games, which is something I always shoot for. I like to get those extra points however I can get them. And you're getting a guy that could outscore the entire quarterback slate in the late slate. Yet you're paying 75% of the price. I really like that. Now New Mexico, their greatest vulnerability is to the run. They're the number 96 run defense, and actually that's a huge improvement on previous seasons. But last week going up against UNLV was a similar situation. UNLV has the number 91 run defense, and yet Rippon proceeded to throw the ball 52 times and rack up 469 passing yards. This is just an offense that likes to use its weapons and likes to grow as an offense regardless of the matchup. And I think that Rippon's going to be used a lot in this matchup, despite playing a lesser opponent as far as in comparison to themselves. But I think it's going to be a great play.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and as you mentioned, that consistency is fantastic. You have to love that, especially when you are grabbing a guy who isn't one of those top-tier guys in terms of salary. Now, let's go to the running back position. Ryan, who do you like there this week?
My number one guy this week is Wayne Gallman, Clemson's running back. Again, he's not one of those top-priced guys. He's only $6,500 on DraftKings, $72 on FanDuel. The guy looks like Brandon Jacobs running out there. I mean, he's 6'1", 215, and they're going up against a Syracuse defense that is really not very good at all against the run. I think they've given up 2+ rushing touchdowns in 5 of 6 games and given up 200 rushing yards to running backs in, I think, 4 of 6 games. So I really like Clemson to get out to an early lead, protect the quarterback, and just really run the ball in the second half of the game. And Gallman's had 20+ carries in each of the last 3 games. He's averaging 5.5 yards a carry. I think he's got a really high floor for a running back, and especially one that, when he costs as little as he does in that mid-tier bracket, I think he can go for 2 or 3 touchdowns and really help your lineup in both cash and GPP games.
Yeah, certainly game script should help him out in that matchup. Wes, who do you like at running back this week?
All right, well, while I was deciding on the guys I was going to cover in this segment, I heard the news that CJ Prosise is out this week, so it made my decision a lot easier. Going with Josh Adams. for Notre Dame, going up against a weak Wake Forest team playing in South Bend. He comes in at $5,900 on DraftKings, which it's it's a no-brainer. On FanDuel, you have to pay up a little bit, going at 7,100. But yeah, FanDuel has a smaller roster, so you can fit more on there. And with him out this week with a concussion, Procise, it's obvious the amount of touches that he was getting while he was playing. They send a lot of offense through the running back position. Adams, he comes in 6'2", 200. Now he does have an upright running style, and you know how much I love that, Matt. But we're not going to be using him for the season here. I'm looking for just week 11, and he does have lateral quicks. I watched a high school video of him, in addition to the game last week against Pittsburgh, which, by the way, he had 20 carries coming in after Procise was injured. Still had 20 carries, 147 yards, a reception, 5 yards. I think he had a receiving touchdown. Put up 25 points. I mean, it was an impressive showing against a very good Pittsburgh defense. But yeah, he's got lateral quickness. He's got the ability to get around the edge and get the extra yardage. Sometimes he does jump around a little bit from what I saw in his high school video. But he's got really good vision. That's one thing that was obvious. And then let's look at the opponent. He's going up against Wake Forest that is not gonna intimidate anybody, and that the offensive line of Notre Dame's is just it's gonna open up seams for him all day, and $5,900 on FanDuel is just great. I'm all over that.
Yeah, 100% agree with you, and obviously it's not great news that Procise is out, but fantastic news for people who like to play DFS. Now, Ryan, who do you like at the wide receiver position?
I'm going to go with Jakeem Grant at Texas Tech. He's a little pricier on FanDuel at $7,400, but I think $6,500 on DraftKings is a pretty good value for a guy who's pulling in 7.5 catches a game. He had this weird game last week against West Virginia where he had like 5 catches for 8 yards and a touchdown. I don't think that's the norm. I think that's going to be an outlier, and they're playing a Kansas State team that gave up 419 yards to Baylor last week. Texas Tech's going to throw the ball all day like they always do. And I think, Grant kind of has this quickness that is going to be really hard to cover, and I think Patrick Mahomes is going to target him a lot this game. Texas Tech's had 300-plus passing yards in 5 of the last 6 games. It's not going to stop this week. And I think Kansas State gave up 5 touchdowns to Oklahoma, 4 to Oklahoma State, 3 to Baylor. I think these are realistic numbers to expect from Texas Tech this week, and I'm going to take their best receiver and hope that he gets 2 or 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think really the only drawback is that he has an upright running style. Isn't that right, Wes? But
Right.
just like all of the other greats, Darren McFadden, Adrian Peterson, Niall Davis, right? All upright running styles. Now, Wes, who is it that you like at wide receiver this week?
All right, it's a no-brainer, and honestly, when you click to set a DraftKings lineup, and you're during the early slate, he is the first guy that you put into your lineup. Every lineup this weekend for the early slate should have him, and that's Oklahoma State's James Washington. Any lineup that does not have him at $5,700 is you're just asking for coming from behind. Going up against Iowa State, it's not going to be good. We're looking at a team that lost to Texas Tech by 35 points. And I mean, we're not just talking about a good matchup. Actually, if you go back to Week 9, prior to his big breakout, I told you to get Washington in your lineup prior to his big 200-yard day. Over his last 3 games, Washington has averaged 5 receptions, which is not all that impressive, but it is when you consider that he's taken those 5 receptions and averaged 162 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 36.2 fantasy points per game. In my opinion, at this point, with the way that the Oklahoma State offense has It's evolved. There's no question about it. Over the last 3 games, the Oklahoma State offense has changed. The entire team has changed its entire personality. Right now, I think James Washington is a very close third to Corey Coleman, Josh Doxson, and go ahead and throw James Washington on there, and he needs to be priced at around $8,000 without question in my mind. He's putting up ridiculous numbers right now, and I think it's going to continue. I don't see why it shouldn't. He's absolutely explosive. I mean, I don't think anybody's put their name in the NFL pool over the last couple of weeks with more impressive play than James Washington. He's gone from a nobody to one of the top wide receivers in the DFS game. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it really has been exciting to see that emergence there as Oklahoma State has gained, I think, more credibility in the national scene, and I don't think that's a coincidence that those two things have coincided. Now, let's go to the tight end position at FanDuel. Ryan, who do you like there?
Yeah, to this point, I've saved my money pretty wisely, and I'm going to go ahead and spend it on Jalen Samuels, NC State. $5,600 on FanDuel. Obviously, the only site you can play a tight end, but there's really no one else I love, and I think because I'm kind of finding value at my other positions, I'm going to go ahead and spend the money. He's had 7 or more receptions the last 3 games. He's the number 1 target on the team. He's kind of got this weird hybrid position where he runs the ball and he catches the ball, and he kind of is the number 1 weapon on NC State. Matthew Days, running back, gets a lot of carries, and I think he's also someone that you could target in games. But as far as tight end, with everyone else in the country getting 2 or 3 catches a game and then fading off, and 20 yards and fading off, I think I'm going to go ahead and spend the money on Samuels.
Yeah, Samuel certainly is a versatile all-around weapon. Wes, who do you like at the tight end position this week?
All right, well, Ryan, you just set your lineup and you paid up for Samuels, and then you found out that Matt Days is done for the year, and you're going to get even more carries for your tight end. Yeah, it's an even more sexy play with Matt Days done, and they honestly don't have a running back to fill in now that he's had season-ending surgery. He is the number 1 target and option all around for that. North Carolina State offense, and honestly, without some of the guys that are playing early in the week, and then some of the tight ends that are injured, it is a pretty thin slate. I didn't have Bucky Hodges to choose from, my go-to. So this week I'm going with Minnesota tight end Brandon Lingen, and he's been a guy that I've cashed in on quite a bit because he's been under the radar. Nobody's making a big deal about him. But as Mitch Leidner, if you look back to last season, what was the key to him having a usable stretch in DFS and fantasy? It was that he had a tight end. He had a tight end, an explosive tight end to throw the ball to, and he was also able to rush. Run for his patented play action. I can't remember what the number was, but I think he was number 1 or 2 in the country at the percentage of play action that Minnesota would use. But whatever, if it works. So with Brandon Lingen, comes in at $2,800. Now they are going up against Iowa, but we really don't know what type of defense Iowa's going to have against a tight end. Lingen's one of the better tight ends right now. I know he's not a big name, but he's really emerged over the last 5 or 6 weeks. And Iowa has not faced a really good pass-catching tight end. Over the last 5 weeks, Lingen has seen the number 16 most targets among all tight ends. It's not that great, but then and that translates to the number 11 most receptions. So it's escalated, and then that's escalated up to the number 4 most yards among all tight ends, and then a little drop off on the touchdowns, the 9th most touchdowns over the last 6 weeks. it's going to be a closer game than I think that the 10 or 12 points that Vegas is giving the Minnesota-Iowa game. Minnesota is playing the absolute spoiler right now. They're not going to go anywhere. They're likely not going to make it to a bowl game. It's possible, but if they were to beat Iowa and get another win, yeah, they could do it. And they're gonna try their hardest. I think this game is going to be a big letdown game for Iowa. Now, I don't think they'll lose, but it's going to be a close one. And I see Lingen getting some play in that game.
And another tight end that I think is really intriguing in that same price range is Josiah Price from Michigan State. They're favored pretty big in that game, I think, with a implied team total of around 35 points. And if you go and look back, Price isn't a guy who gets a lot of yards or a lot of receptions, but each game he's played in which Michigan State has won with a good number of points, over 30 points, Price has a touchdown. And I think that just kind of has to do with the game script, the fact that there are enough touchdowns to go around that even the tight end can get one. But for a guy who's priced around 2,800, he is at least an intriguing option. Now let's go to the flex position at DraftKings. Ryan, who do you like there?
Yeah, I'm going to go kind of go back to the Oklahoma State, like Wes was talking about, and take their other receiver, David Glidden. $4,200 on DraftKings. By no means do I think he's James Washington, or does he have the ability as James Washington, but he does lead the team in targets and receptions. And I really love that matchup against Iowa State, where I think both Washington and Glidden are going to get a lot of targets, a lot of catches. And he doesn't have a lot of touchdowns this year, but I think if there's a game that Oklahoma State can pour it on and really try and make a statement, it could be this game. Like I said, Iowa State's given up 3+ touchdowns and 400+ yards on the air in 3 of the last 5 games. So I think Washington is probably my top option, but if you want to save a little money and just try and fit someone in that flex spot, I think Glidden's a really good option too.
All right, Wes, how about you? Who do you like in the flex this week?
All right, at flex, it's a guy that's really flown under the radar, and not because he's not getting or the team's not getting a lot of attention. It's mostly because his quarterback is taking it all, and that's Elijah Hood at North Carolina. Marquise Williams has been a monster. Honestly, maybe a number 1 or 2 quarterback over I don't know how many weeks now. I mean, he has been absolutely destroying the DFS circuit. Basically, and it's funny, early in the season they were talking about benching him for Mitch Trubinsky, so that just looks ridiculous right now. In the last 5 games, Elijah Hood's averaged 15.8 carries. Over the last 3, it's up to 19. But yeah, in the last 5, he's averaged 85 rushing yards and 1.6 TD touchdowns, which is the 11th most among all running backs over the last 5 games. In Miami, they've got the number 94 run D, which was completely torched by Dalvin Cook. Obviously, Elijah Hood's not Dalvin Cook, but this is a player in an offense that's going to give him a lot of red zone touches to score touchdowns, and I believe he's got 8 touchdowns over his last 5 games, and I think it's going to be a game where he'll get a couple of them going up against the Miami team that's really looking pretty bad right now. And honestly, I graded the Miami Duke game recently, and I feel so bad for the Blue Devils. They were completely had a win stolen from them. So yeah, we'll see if Elijah Hood can inflict some justice on the Hurricanes for that. But he's a guy that's gonna get some goal line touches, and I think a couple touchdowns and 100 yards is pretty much a floor against that Miami defense.
Yeah, I agree. Elijah Hood's a really intriguing guy, and you have to like he's got that big-bodied workhorse build. He can really grind out a lot of yards if they want to give him the ball. Now, finally, let's go to the GPP arena. Ryan, who is one guy that you think has a high ceiling for this week and would be a good option for tournaments?
Sure. I think the guy that I'm going to go with, usually with GPP games, you want to find someone who's pretty low priced and not going to be owned in a lot of leagues. But I'm going to go with the guy who might be a little more expensive, but I think because he's playing Alabama, is not going to see a high ownership, and that's De'Runny Wilson. $5,600 on DraftKings, 51 on FanDuel. I just think everybody is really on board with the Alabama defense, and they should be, but I think they're undervaluing the Mississippi State offense and what they've done this year. They're second in the SEC in passing yards a game. I think they're throwing for almost 300 yards a game. Wilson is the number one option in that offense along with Fred Ross, but Wilson's a touchdown machine. He's got a touchdown each of the last 4 games and 2 touchdowns in 2 of them, so what you want to look for in a GPP guy is someone that has that upside that is going to be owned in low percentages. And I think Wilson has the ability to go for 2 touchdowns. I don't think Mississippi State's going to win the game. I think they're going to keep it close. And if Dak Prescott can air it out like I think he will this week, I think Wilson has a really good chance to be a good under-the-radar play in GPP.
Yeah, I like that call. Wilson definitely one of those guys who has the capability of scoring multiple touchdowns, especially because he has that huge frame, which he can really use kind of as, he has that basketball background he can use to kind of block out and really use his body to get those receptions. Now, Wes, GPP, who do you like this week?
All right, I'm going with the exact same strategy that Ryan mentioned, and with Auburn going up against the number, I believe, 27 run defense of Georgia. No, I'm sorry, number 28 run defense of Georgia. I'm going with a guy that I was really high on during the preseason, and then who was for some reason passed over for the starter job. I know he was injured for a while, but Javon Robinson of Auburn comes in at $4,700 on DraftKings, $5,000 on FanDuel, which is where the real value is, almost at the bottom there. But yeah, going up against the Georgia defense, Auburn's played a lot better over the last 3 weeks, and it's not very surprising that it's coincided with the usage of Javon Robinson. If you go back and you look at his JUCO numbers prior to playing with Auburn, they're video game numbers. He was player of the year in his junior college conference, or actually in the entire league, or however they call it, the California League. He just put up ridiculous numbers, and the decision to go to him is I think was a brilliant move, and it's translated to really improved play. Now Shaun White, while he's not a DFS guy yet, he's actually looking good too. He's making some really big throws for a true freshman, and I think he's going to be something to grow on for Auburn. But going up against Georgia, this is not a game where there's going to be a lot of passing involved. Shaun White's injured right now. Don't even know if he'll play. Jeremy Johnson may get the start. He's not a guy that's going to throw the ball. And then, of course, for Georgia, you've got Grayson Lambert and Bryce Ramsey, and we're not even going to go into the other guy. So it's basically going to be on the ground, back and forth, grinding the ball, and of course, Sonny Michel's he's the elite player here, but coming in at $5,000 on FanDuel, Javon Robinson, and going up against a tough Georgia defense. Now, also consider that Robinson's first start came against Ole Miss, who their run defense was number 27, and he put up 91 rushing yards on them. So and Georgia gives up a touchdown per game to the opposing starting running back on average. So I think 91 yards and a touchdown for $5,000 on FanDuel is a great value, opening up a lot of salary cap space for the bigger players.
Yeah, I like that call. And as you mentioned, Javon Robinson was a total beast, and I believe the phrase you were looking for was the California Community College Athletic Association. Of course, not to be confused with the National Junior College Athletic Association. California needs its own association for its community colleges, but really a fantastic player there, and it would be exciting to see him get the chance to really perform at the next level. And I have to say it wouldn't be a show of the College Daily Slant if I didn't mention Justin Stockton of Texas Tech as a potential minimum salary minimum salary GPP play. So anyway, that would be my contribution to the show, and hopefully you ignore me and don't put him in your lineup. Now, Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show. Everyone, be sure to follow him at Ryan Rao. But that is spelled Rauch. So Ryan Rao, you can follow him on Twitter there, and you can read his work at PFF Fantasy. And that is going to do it for this edition of the College Daily Slant. Be sure to tune in next episode for our DraftKings and FanDuel Week 12 plays. You can catch us on PFF Radio, subscribe to the show on iTunes, listen to the show on Stitcher and Blog Talk Radio, and watch the show on YouTube and the Fantasy Sports Network. For Wes Huber on Twitter at PFF_Wes, I'm Matt Friedman, Matt F. the Oracle. Thanks for tuning in.